Persona 5 lives up to its predecessors in many ways, but especially in regards to metaphorical language and symbolic subject matter. That's no easy feat either, especially with the success that Persona 4 brought to the table. It was clear that Persona 5 had to follow the Atlus tradition of being more innovative than the last game in the series. Like many people, I really enjoy the soundtracks from the Persona games, and this title has been no exception in terms of great music, from Life Will Change to Whims of Fate. But Persona 5 has always had one track in particular that, while maybe not my favorite, has always stood out to me more so than the other songs in the game purely for its lyrical content. Rivers in the Desert is one of those incredibly memorable songs that, when you hear, you know all its beats, every ascending and descending note, and sing along to all the words. And if you're anything like me, you probably gave some thought to the meaning behind those words as well. So in this video, we're going to be going line by line and reviewing the entirety of Rivers in the Desert's lyrics, from intro to final hook, and addressing what meaning lies within it and how it's relevant to the story and themes of Persona 5. Now, if you've yet to complete Persona 5, then needless to say, there will be spoilers up until the in-game date of December 11th, or the fight where the song first plays. Atlus is big on spoilers, and if it was up to them, they'd probably like you to enjoy the game prior to discussing it, so no hard feelings if you click off from this point. But for everyone else, let's go ahead and get into it. It's now or it's never, and I've got to make my decision. This time it could be my moment. Is this a mirage, or a chance to fulfill my mission? So this represents the feelings of the group, specifically the protagonist, having come this far, reaching this metaphorical puppet master behind the mental shutdown cases. Not only does the protagonist have personal stake in this, as Shido's the sole reason you've picked up a criminal record and been forced to leave your hometown, but even more so that he's the man running for the position of Prime Minister for the very country all of you and your friends and loved ones live in. Given all of this, it's only natural that it's seen as the final hurdle to cross for the Phantom Thieves. Mirages not only being a play on the desert theme, but the idea that the world inside the heart is somewhat of an illusion itself. One that can be interacted with, of course, unlike a mirage, but one so temperamental that should the desires of its creator be taken, it would crumble, leaving the victim without the will to continue with their corrupt deeds. So given how far the Phantom Thieves have made it up until this point, it's only natural for the group to question if their role is reaching its conclusion. A river in a dry land, the last ace in a lost hand, a heartbeat for a tin man, oasis in a singed land. In order to understand the titular river and the oasis that follows it, we first need to understand what water represents. Water represents life, creation, relief, healing. However, in this case, I'd argue water's more indicative of hope. Imagine being lost in a desert, the scorching sun's burning your feet, sweat dripping from your lip and your brow, the blinding suns in your eyes. But then you cross a sandy dune and you see a river flowing into an oasis. Needless to say, you'd be filled with respite and newfound hope. Remember this because we'll come back to this when we get to the chorus proper. This next section can be separated into the first 5 lines and the second 4 lines. Starting off with, I'm keeping the balance, but I'm standing on razor's edge now. Move quicker, my life is over. One strike, just a feint, then I'm out of his field of vision. This is just a simple description of the fight that's going on with Shido. The protagonists are facing this overwhelming force that can crush them at a moment's notice. It's more descriptive of the gameplay considering Shido's dangerous moveset and relentless flurry of physical and almighty attacks. The fight with Shido has multiple phases, and by the time you get to the final phase, it's a one-on-one fight with him while he's at his strongest. So this phase alone feels like exactly what the lyrics are talking about. And then moving on to the second set of lines, the last 4. Don't ask why I'm ready, but I'm ready to strike him down now. A chance at a new start, there's no time for indecision. Joker knows that he has to act now and end this fight, or else everything him and his friends have been through and fought for up until this point would be for naught. So with thoughts of his friends and the journey thus far in mind, comes a stronger resolve to finish Shido off. So now we get to the fun part in the chorus. A river in a dry land, the last ace in a lost hand. When the hope of new beginnings burned our feet, now we need it. A heartbeat for a tin man, an oasis in a singed land, reminds us what we're here for, creating new life, creating rivers in the desert. So let's break this down line by line, starting with a river in a dry land. A river in a dry land is simply hope in a place where there is none. The Phantom Thieves' justice is to change the morally irreprehensible in a way that is impossible to anyone other than them. The Phantom Thieves are hope for the victims of those whose hearts they change. The last ace in a lost hand is an interesting line, as an ace is the highest card in a game of poker, and this line kind of reminded me of something called a bad beat. In poker, a bad beat is when a player appears to have a winning hand, as seen by having stronger cards, but still loses. Shido makes a move like this, as he even states that he misjudged the power of the Phantom Thieves, and laments his negligence in finishing off the protagonist in the court case that ultimately led to this confrontation. A joker is also known as a wild card, one that can be whatever the player needs it to be in order to complete a hand, even, for example, an ace. So alternatively, the protagonist, aka Joker, a wild card persona user, could be seen as the last hope for defeating Shido in this otherwise lost hand of a fight. When the hope of new beginnings burned our feet, now we need it. The hope of new beginnings is what sent the Phantom Thieves on their reformation quest to start with, the drive to change society and change the hearts of those who hurt those beneath them, and to save the victims of unjust circumstances. However, change isn't always easy, and it can bring a lot of pain and strife. This can be seen in the stories of the main cast as they're introduced and you play through their arcs, and extends into their social links as well. Yusuke must resume his artistic endeavors without the help of the teacher he knew his whole life. He can no longer rely on the connections or resources his teacher supplied to him. This is now a task for him alone to bear, and though it may be far harder than when his teacher was around, it was necessary for Yusuke to endure that hardship to become a better person. Makoto must accept that her reputation as a straight-edge student council president, along with her need to be useful to those around her, turns her into a puppet for the adults in her life. We can see this when Principal Kobayakawa, or even teachers like Miss Kawakami, pass responsibilities off to her, such as delivering news to students or carrying out simple tasks for them. Principal Kobayakawa even directly tells her that he'd like her to investigate students in the school and determine what happened to make Kamoshida have a change in personality and confess the crimes that the school had been turning a blind eye to. Even going so far as to offer to write her a letter of recommendation to any college or university she wishes for completing this task. Choosing to be her own person means choosing to forego being useful for others means, and to put her strengths to use for herself and those she cares about. Futaba is chained to the past by memories of her mother's death, and the role she feels she's played in driving her mother to suicide. We later find out that Futaba only thinks she's the reason her mother threw herself into traffic, but that in all actuality she was the victim of a mental shutdown, and it's Futaba's guilt and anxieties that have clouded the facts of what truly happened. In refusing to avert her eyes any longer, accepting her shadow, and embracing the truth, much like the cast of Persona 4, she gains her persona and begins on her own journey of recovery. Quick heads up, we're going to be getting into endgame spoilers for Morgana's story. Skip ahead 20 seconds if you don't want to hear it. So Morgana's new beginning doesn't come until the very end of the game, discovering that he's nothing more than a guide created by the Velvet Room to lead the trickster through his journey, and not a human like he once thought. Though this inevitability was something that Morgana had hoped to not be the case, as seen every time he got defensive when anyone joked about him only being a cat, he comes to accept it when learning the definitive truth about his origin, knowing that it comes with the freedom of being his own person. The same could be said for Ryuji, Haru, and An. Ryuji comes to terms with his reputation being tarnished by Kamoshida, and how his delinquent-like behavior is more of a coping mechanism. Ryuji decides to change himself not only for the betterment of his friends, but the mother who always supports him. In the wake of her father's death, the company's handed over to Haru, a responsibility she feels she must take on. However, she accepts this isn't something she's ready for, and she has plans on her own for the future, and a way of honoring her grandfather's business. An, meanwhile, having always been level-headed and a voice of reason especially in the early game, becomes even more set on helping those close to her, and not shying away from their struggles. Needless to say, the Phantom Thieves walk a difficult path for the sake of their justice. To quote Persona 3, attaining one's dream requires a stern will and unfailing determination. A heartbeat for a Tin Man. I spent a good amount of time thinking about this line, and at first the obvious conclusion may be that it's a reference to the book The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by Lyman Frank Baum. The story includes a Tin Man who wants a heart because he believes it will make him emotionally expressive. However, the heart granted to him by the wizard is nothing more than a fake made of silk and stuffed with sawdust. Despite this, the Tin Man is one of the most empathetic and loving characters, expressed by the fact that even the act of stepping on a bug visually saddens him as he claims he must learn to be more careful. So how is this relevant to the song? First, we need to figure out who the song is referring to when they mention a heartbeat for a Tin Man. The Tin Man you may think is Shido, as stealing his heart would then grant him empathy and steal away his tyrannical desires. By stealing his heart in the form of deepest selfish desires, they'd be ironically giving him his heart back, heart in the form of empathy and understanding for others. And while I don't think this is wrong, I do think there's more to it, which led me to realize that analyzing this line by itself doesn't actually do the chorus justice. As we discussed earlier, water represents hope in this case, so if we look at the line, a heartbeat for a tin man, in conjunction with an oasis in a singed land, we then see that these two lines are saying the same thing. A heartbeat for a tin man is a heart for the heartless, while an oasis in a singed land is hope for the hopeless. Then these two lines together lead into, reminds us what we're here for, what are we here for, creating new life, creating rivers in the desert. So now we tie it all together. A desert is a land classified by its very little to no rainfall per year. They're usually barren, lack vegetation, and experience extreme temperatures. If water is hope, then what of an oasis in a singed land? What more could be said of a river in a desert then, as well as the hope and change that would bring? Water brings forth life, and with life, hope. Just look at the River Nile for a great example. Despite its location, we see an abundance of vegetation. Water and vegetation brings animals, and where those three exist, civilization flourishes in its wake. You can find further support for this theory in the Bible. For reference, we'll be looking at the King James Version. Isaiah 43:19 says, "Behold, I will do a new thing. Now it shall spring forth. Shall ye not know it? I will even make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert." Chapter 43 is specifically about the power and redemption of God, as well as the blessings he provides. The book of Isaiah is especially important as it prophesies the birth of the Messiah who would deliver hope and salvation to his people. The book of Numbers gives an account of the prophet Moses, who, after leading his people out of slavery by the hand of the Egyptians, journeyed with them for 40 years in the desert to the Promised Land. During that time, the people had no water, and when Moses communed with God, God told him to speak to the rock, and it would bring forth water for the people and their animals to drink. Moses actually ended up striking the rock, which wasn't what God asked him to do, though the rock still gave water, but I digress. This instance of water flowing abundantly from the rock was a gift of life and hope to the weary sojourners on their exodus. And just like how God created hope for his people, the themes of Persona 5 explore the same aspect through the Phantom Thieves' shared goals. Now, I know it seems like a stretch comparing the cast of Persona 5 to messianic figures, but Atlus has been known to put religious imagery in their games before. The entire controversy surrounding Persona 1 was because it was called the Revelations Persona, paralleling the Book of Revelations in the Bible, which didn't make a lot of groups happy. Even Persona 3 has its fair share of religious imagery and contains a Christ-like figure. The games even feature an entire cast of personas from Hinduism to Buddhism and all the way to everything under the umbrella of Abrahamic religions. I mean, there's a persona called Lucifer, so making comparisons to the Bible when talking about Persona isn't too far-fetched. My heart is a furnace, it's hot as hell in my world of conflict. One goal is what keeps me going. Take back what I lost to the bosses of greed and fear, yeah. Don't ask why I'm ready, but I'm ready to take them down now. The time for a new start is constantly drawing nearer. Coming off the heels of the chorus, the lyrics from this point on aren't as heavy, and this section here is, once again, more descriptive of the fight than anything else. There's a fire in the protagonist's heart that pushes him to keep going until he's taken back everything from those who have wronged him, be it freedom, security, sense of self, dreams and ambitions, or even the future. The Phantom Thieves have no doubt in their hearts and no hesitation in their actions as they fight for a new beginning that, with every person saved and every heart changed, is coming closer and closer to fruition. A river in a dry land, the last days in a lost hand. When the hope of new beginnings burned our feet, now we need it. A heartbeat for a tin man, an oasis in a singed land. Reminds us what we're here for, creating new life, creating rivers in the desert. Here we repeat the chorus again before leading into a pre-chorus that is a lot calmer and more introspective than the rest of the song. When a cool drop of water's all I need, gotta clear my head of anger and greed. A place to refresh heart and mind, can I find sometime in. So, before we head back into the chorus again, this last set of verses are about the need for impartialness when executing justice. The Phantom Thieves wield a power that can easily be used for self-serving, unpunishable injustices. As such, they need to be sure that they're acting in good faith instead of self-interest like the ones that they're passing judgment on. However, they are human, and as such, the plea for mental respite amidst unrelenting conflict is one that comes with the hope of doing what is right when the time comes, and never faltering in the justice they sought to acquire. Rivers in a dry land, the last days in a lost hand. When the hope of new beginnings burned our feet, now we need it. A heartbeat for a tin man, an oasis in a singed land. Reminds us what we're here for, creating new life, creating rivers in the desert. So finally, we reach the chorus one last time. Combine this with the pre-chorus and we understand that the river of hope that the Phantom Thieves seek to create is not only for others, but for themselves as well. They were all victims of circumstances they could do very little to alleviate. but they've chosen the path of rebellion in which they break the shackles that bind them to their previous fates, and with it, hope is created where it seemed there was none. The Phantom Thieves function as guides that will hope into existence where there could be none prior, helping others find their new beginnings, such as the ones they claim for themselves, and correcting the paths of those who have lost their way due to greed, power, and hedonistic pursuits. Their previous victories serve as not only reminders of the virtuousness of their endeavors, but also pushes them to persevere in the face of hardship. I had a lot of fun making this video, and it's been something I've thought about doing for years. It's definitely not the last one I have planned either, as I've already started work on another one, so if you enjoyed it, check back again soon and you may find another one already up. My hope is that this video generates conversation about the themes of the game and how it ties into the lyrics, so feel free to leave thoughts or questions in the comments. I do read them all, and I would enjoy conversing with others who share an interest in the same subject. But anyway, until next time, thanks for watching. If water is hope, then what of an await? Wow, really? If water is hope, then what of an... Then what of an oasis? 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 If water is hope, then what of an oasis in us? Wow! I'm getting really annoyed because I'm trying to say... Wait, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, I'm trying... It's like I can't talk. I'm trying to say, then what of an oasis in a singed land? Then what of an oasis in a singed land? It's like I can't say it. My mouth isn't working. If water is hope, then what of an oasis in a singed land? I can say it perfectly right now, but the second I try to say it into the mic, it's impossible. I start stumbling. All right, I'll be back.